Good morning, everyone. Today is Wednesday, May 13th. Hope that you are having a good morning. I just wanted to take a few minutes to go over the final section of chapter 12. So we're still exploring Japan and how geography shapes their worldview. So today we're going to be talking about resources and climate. Okay. So everyone, to start off with, Japan was self-sufficient, so that means it didn't depend on receiving resources or items from other countries. So Japan had only a little bit of trade with other countries before 1853, but yet the country survived and did well. Japan's farmers and fishers provided enough food to feed the people. They got their wood for building and for fuel came from their forests. They had a really nice climate that was perfect for silkworms and cotton plants, so they were able to get the materials for fabrics from that. And they were also able to use precious metals for tools, and these were used by the artisans as well. So you could see that Japan, the geography provided them with everything they needed to survive. So how was this achieved? A little bit more about that. So nature compensated for the limited amount of arable land because, of course, Japan is a small country. We saw that in the geography. And so the land is actually very fertile in Japan. So that means that things can grow very easily there. So a temperate climate. So that means they didn't have really cold winters or really hot summers. They had kind of a climate in the middle. And so they had also really dependable rainfall. And so that provided them with a pretty good growing season, so longer one than is possible in Canada. Japan also has a brief winter, so people learn to grow enough food to last through the winter months. So rice, this is of course one of the main foods in Japan. Although the poorest Japanese could afford rice only occasionally, it was and remains the food is most associated with Japan and its culture. One thing to note is that growing rice is really labor intensive, so it requires a lot of people, and it depends on the right amount of moisture. So it needs the perfect climate and brought by the monsoon winds and deposits as rain. So monsoons are like so if the monsoons fail to appear, then rice could not be grown, and if the rice is not grown, of course, the people might go hungry. And so rice was also used as currency for centuries, so it was used in the place of money. So for tax purposes, the value of land was determined by the estimated amount of rice that it could produce. Person's worth was determined by rice production. A lord's rank and wealth related to the total rice production of his territory. So everyone, here are some pictures of growing rice and the rice fields or rice paddies in Japan. Some other foods that they produced in Japan, of course, the sea provided fish, one of the main sources of protein for the Japanese. Another one of their staple foods or most common foods is seaweed, high in vitamins and mineral salts. And so the sea and its food became central to the Japanese way of life. Soy is also essential to the Japanese diet. People in the Western world have only recently begun eating soybeans and soy products. And so you can see in this picture, this is a picture about the sea currents and stuff. And so this provides ideal fishing grounds for the Japanese. And so a homogenous society. So Japan is considered to be a homogenous society, a great unified family with common beliefs and values. And so that means that they would be mostly one ethnicity, so similar cultural backgrounds, similar beliefs and values. And so it consists of people who see themselves as having similar nature and character. And so the Ainu people, these are the indigenous people in Japan, and so they lived in the northern part of Japan for several thousand years. They lived in this area that the Japanese called Izoki, or the land of the Izo, and the word Ainu means human in the Ainu language. They had their own separate society and territory, but eventually the Japanese population took them over. The Ainu fought several wars of resistance against the Japanese because they fought back against Japanese control, but eventually but they were defeated each time. So the Japanese remained successful. And so eventually the Ainu territory became known as Hokkaido. And the Japanese began a program of assimilation of the Ainu. And so if you remember, assimilation means that when one cultural group is imposing their beliefs and values on another cultural group. And so we just saw this when we were looking at our Aztec unit. We saw this when the Spanish colonized the Aztecs and made the Aztecs conform to their Christian beliefs and values. They assimilated the Aztecs into their way of life, essentially. And we also saw this in the Indigenous peoples in Canada, of course, with the residential schools, when the Europeans came over to colonize Canada, they did the same thing with the Indigenous people in Canada. So they assimilated them to their beliefs and values. Um, so Ainu assimilation, the Ainu were forbidden to speak their language or practice many of their customs. They were restricted to living in areas the government provided for them. They were given land to farm, even though they were traditionally a hunting and fishing society. And so if you want to read a little bit about them, you can read the Ainu Today on page 179. Okay. So everyone, that's all for today. Thank you so much for joining me for this little session today. See you soon. Okay, bye.